By World War II, improvements in the internal combustion engine gave tanks greater speed, heavier armor, and more lethal weaponry. The need arose for a mobile weapon that could put the power to stop them in the hands of an infantryman.
This war moves fast. The Germans and Italians found that out in Africa. We picked up some things, too.
The bazooka.
The famous American bazooka, nicknamed after the musical instrument that it resembled, is a simple tube, the mechanical firing mechanism, sort of like a giant gun, but it's essentially a guidance tube, or an initial guidance tube, for this projectile.
The recoil was balanced by the countering forces of the projectile exiting the front of the tube and the propellant exiting at the rear. With the pistol grip and shoulder support made of wood, the unit weighed just 6.5 kilograms. And it was easy to operate between a crew of two, one to load and the other to fire the 60-millimeter projectile, which was capable of piercing armor up to 102 millimeters thick. Against all German tank types, often a single well-placed shot was all that was needed. However, success was not guaranteed.
You have the ability to reload. Very important when you're trying to engage tanks. You might miss the tank. You might simply damage the tank. So to be able to fire more than one shot, a reusable system is very useful.
It was such an effective, portable, destructive force that close to 500,000 bazookas, along with over 15 million rockets, were produced. But the Americans were not alone in looking to put highly destructive capabilities into the hands of their infantry. The Cold War-era RPG-7 can trace its roots back to the bazooka, and like its forebear, this Soviet system follows the same simple principle of a reloadable tube that fires a rocket-propelled projectile. The differences between the two are in the missile.
It looks like it's got a stick with a double conical shape on the end of the stick. When it's launched, there are fins that deploy, there's spring-loaded fins that open up, and that provides drag stabilization to the weapon system as it flies through the air.
The RPG-7's rocket is initially thrown clear of the tube by a booster charge. Once in motion, the acceleration sets off a pressure-generated spark that ignites a sustainer motor, which accelerates the projectile once it's 11 meters from the launcher. By using this two-stage firing mechanism, the RPG-7 cuts the tube length from 1.5 meters, as it was on the bazooka, to just 90 centimeters. Projectiles up to 93 millimeters in diameter and 4.5 kilograms in weight are fired at a velocity of 294 meters per second. And the warhead makes up most of the weight, which, combined with the extra kinetic energy imparted by the rocket's vastly superior speed, means the RPG-7 can penetrate standard armor as thick as 750 millimeters. But by far, the RPG-7's greatest asset is its simplicity of construction, which has seen over 9 million enter service since 1961.
It's prolific, it's widespread, and the technology is reasonably old, but it's simple. Lots of Soviet engineering was simple and effective, and the RPG-7 is no exception.
The RPG-7 uses what is called a shaped charge, which is lethal against traditional armor. Suddenly, tanks were beatable. But in modern warfare, no single machine completely dominates for long. All weapons develop in response to improvements in others. The improvements in armor-piercing rounds saw the design tension between armor and anti-tank weaponry swing in favor of the weapon. With tanks rendered increasingly vulnerable, designers hit back in the 1970s with even more sophisticated defense systems.
So one of the ways in which protection can be offered against something like a shaped charge weapon system, such as an RPG-7, is by using explosive reactive armor.
Explosive reactive armor consists of sheets or slabs of high explosive sandwiched between two plates. When hit by a shaped charge, the explosive detonates, driving the plates apart and damaging the incoming projectile. Not so with the munitions fired by the Javelin, which use an ingenious tandem warhead.
The Javelin is a guided missile, and it carries on it a shaped charge weapon system, so when it makes contact with the vehicle, it detonates the explosive that propels a high-velocity copper jet into the armor of the vehicle.
A smaller precursor charge prepares the way for that copper jet by pushing through the explosive reactive armor and clearing a path for the larger main warhead to penetrate the target's primary defenses. Using a command launch unit that incorporates an integrated day-night sight, the missile is thrown free at launch, and like the RPG-7, only fires its rocket motor once clear of the crew. Engagement of airborne, static, or mobile ground-based targets is accomplished using either the traditional direct-fire line-of-sight method or with help from the missile's inbuilt infrared guidance system, which can be programmed to attack armored vehicles at their weakest point. It does this by climbing to 150 meters as it reaches the target, and then rapidly descending from a steep angle with devastating effect.